Good morning, Year 5. We are back. It is day 16 for the Year 5 story. Hope you all had a lovely weekend. So we're on chapter 2 here of, the solving the case. We will see what happens. Daisy plunged along so fast that I could not keep up with her. I was still puffing along the library corridor when she reached the end and flicked round the corner into New Wing. There was a shriek, a thump, then a chorus of horrified gasps, and I heard Daisy's voice high with panic, crying, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Oh, Miss Griffin. Oh, here, let me." I dashed round the corner and came face to face with a catastrophe. The corridor was absolutely littered with things, papers and exercise books, hairpins and bullseyes and pencils, all clattering and rolling about. Daisy, in her haste, had careened straight into the neat and tidy form of Miss Griffin. I gaped in horror. Daisy was on her knees, frantically scooping things up again. Miss Griffin's carefully set hair was disarranged and her expression was horrible to see. Everyone began to gather round, but Miss Griffin rapped out, "Move along, girls," and they all fled in terror. I got down next to Daisy. She was sliding about over the tiles, picking up papers and stammering, "Miss Griffin, I am terribly sorry, but please believe me." But Miss Griffin did not look as though she believed anything much. I picked up a letter, bending its corner, and Miss Griffin snapped, "Don't touch that, Wong. Oh, out of the way, both of you, and so you don't cause any more damage." I could tell she was terribly angry. I'd never heard her snarl at a girl like that before. Daisy, trembling, presented Miss Griffin with the pile of papers she had already collected, and we both shuffled backwards to begin scooping up things from Daisy's bag. Miss Griffin, meanwhile, knelt down in her impeccable tweed skirt and gathered up papers as though she was one of Deep Dean's maids. It made me burn with shame. I felt as if we both let the school down terribly. Daisy kept stammering about how sorry she was, but Miss Griffin was in no mood to listen. "Wells, enough. This does not become you at all. Deep Dean girls should accept the blame for their mistakes with the same grace and quiet dignity that they show in the rest of their lives. I do not expect to see my girls tearing about the school like barbarians. Quite frankly, I am disappointed in you. You may go." "Yes, Miss Griffin," said Daisy weakly, and she curtsied, though slightly lopsidedly, because she had the contents of her book bag loose in her arms. Then we both scuttled away, feeling like the smallest of shrimps. "I thought I was for it," Daisy whispered to me once we were far enough down the corridor. "Oh, Lord, although look at the time. We should be fearfully late for art." We looked round once more to make sure that Miss Griffin was not watching us. She wasn't. She had just bent down to pick up something else, and we ran for it. I always enjoyed art. This is less to do with art itself and more to do with the fact that Hong Kong is part of a magical made-up place called the Orient. Because I am from there, he thinks I must be a natural artist. He seems to imagine that everyone in Hong Kong lies about on bright purple divans in rooms papered with Chinese print that you can get in Woolworths, with peacocks wandering around at our feet. I guess you lot wouldn't know what Woolworths was. It's an old shop, a bit like Wilco's, but W.H. Smith too. Of course, this is not true, and I am not a natural artist at all, but the one hadn't noticed, so I copied Chinese dragons out of books I found in the library, and the one is delighted. The next day I was busy colouring in one of my dragons when I noticed that Daisy had stopped work and was scrabbling about in her book bag with an awful expression on her face. "Is something wrong?" I whispered. In answer, Daisy took her bag and tipped the whole thing over her desk. Pencils, rubbers and bits of string rained down, and Daisy began to hunt through them, picking each thing up and then tossing it aside again a moment later. "Hazel," she said, still hunting away frantically. "Hazel, I can't find the earring." I went cold. "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure," Daisy hissed, gesturing at the contents of her bag. There certainly was no gold earring to be seen. My last look back at Miss Griffin played like a film reel in my head. She had been bending down over something small lying on the tiles, looking at it intently. I glanced at Daisy and saw that she was having exactly the same thought as me. "What should we do?" she gasped. "Miss Griffin will put it straight into Davy Jones." Davy Jones is our name for Miss Griffin's box of confiscated items. It sits in her office, and we call it that because you know that once something's gone there, you'll never see it again. We'll never get it back. How will we confront our suspects if we don't have that earring? Oh, Hazel, our beautiful case, it's ruined." "Well," I said, surprising myself by what came out of my mouth next, "if we need it, we'll just have to go and get it back. We'll go to Miss Griffin's office at lunch, and you can tell her that it's a present for your mother, or something. It's worth a try anyway. After all, Miss Griffin likes you." "She did until I ran into her about half an hour ago," said Daisy. "But still, it's an excellent idea, Hazel. Whatever has got into you?" "I want to solve the case," I said. "I want the person who killed Miss Bell and Miss Tennyson punished. You said yourself how important it was." Daisy raised her eyebrows. "Yes, but Hazel wrong, encouraging me to tell a lie. I never thought I'd see the day. You're right, though. We need that earring, and we're going to get it back." Chapter 3. Daisy and I made for Miss Griffin's office on the top floor of New Wing at the end of lunch. We should not really have been in New Wing out of lesson time, of course, but things were still so mixed up after Miss Tennyson's death that no one had time to notice us running by except the dark-haired chief of police, who gave us a look as we passed him on the stairs by the founder's portrait. I hope we were looking innocent. The door to Miss Griffin's office was closed. Daisy and I grimaced at each other encouragingly, and then Daisy knocked on the door. My heart was stammering as we waited to hear Miss Griffin's voice, but the person who answered our knock was not Miss Griffin at all. It was Miss Lappet. "Come in," she called, and there was a hurried clinking noise. Daisy and I looked at each other in panic. Neither of us had expected this. Asking Miss Griffin for the earring was terrifying enough, but asking one of our 3 remaining suspects for the evidence that might prove she'd done it, that was more frightening altogether. "Come in," called Miss Lappet again, and this time her voice was tinged with annoyance. "We'll just have to bluff it," Daisy whispered to me. "This could be a way to finally eliminate her." Or prove that she did it, I thought. I was about to tell Daisy not to go in, but she was already pushing open the door. Daisy is a marvellous actress, and at that moment I was glad. My heart was drumming painfully in my chest, and my knees were wobbling, but Daisy behaved as though nothing at all was wrong. "Oh, Miss Lappet," she said, as though it was a jolly good surprise. "Good afternoon." "Good afternoon, Daisy. Hazel," said Miss Lappet. She was at the desk where Miss Bell used to work, next to Miss Griffin's big green leather one, and she was squinting at us. Her hair was fluffy, her glasses were askew, and there was a stain on her enormous blouse front. She looked a harmless fright. But appearances, I had learned, could be deceptive. I made sure to stop a safe distance away from her, halfway across Miss Griffin's green and blue patterned carpet, and let Daisy speak. "Miss Lappet," she said, "this is a terribly awful thing to ask of you. I really ought to wait till Miss Griffin's back. It's rather a difficult request." That got to Miss Lappet, of course. "As you can see today, I'm acting as Miss Griffin's secretary while she deals with the police. Anything you say to Miss Griffin, you can say to me, dear," she said. "Oh," Daisy said, "in that case, I'm sure Miss Griffin told you that I bumped into her this morning. I felt like such an imbecile. I shall never forgive myself for it, but, well, I dropped something when I crashed into her. It was something I oughtn't to have had, but Mummy's birthday is next week. I knew it was terribly wrong of me to have her present down at school, and as soon as I found it was missing, I realised that the only thing to do was come to Miss Griffin and simply beg her to let me have it back." "How sweet," said Miss Lappet, slurring the W slightly. "What was it exactly?" I braced myself, feeling as though I was about to be tackled by a very large girl wielding a hockey stick. "Well, I bought Mummy a pair of gold earrings, but when I looked in art I could only find one of them still in the box. It's 2 long teardrops, one above the other." I waited for Miss Lappet to jump up from her seat and shout or faint or hurl Miss Griffin's paperweight at us. Instead, she merely looked confused. "But Daisy, dear, what an odd coincidence. How strange. Are you sure? Miss Griffin has just found her own earring that had been missing all week, a gold one, just like that. She showed it to me a minute ago, and here it's still in her desk." And she took something out of the desk many drawers and held it for us to see. There on her palm sat the earring that we found in the tunnel, its 2 gold tears shining. "You see, this is Miss Griffin's, dear," Miss Lappet told Daisy. "Are you sure the earring you lost was like this one?" Daisy blinked, then she said very quickly, "Oh no, you're right. How annoying. I'm terribly sorry to have bothered you. Come along, Hazel. We ought to be going. I'm sure Miss Lappet is very busy. Come along, Hazel." She had to drag me out of the room. I couldn't take my eyes off the gold earring in Miss Lappet's hand. It couldn't be. I thought it could not be. But it was. There the earring sat, looking ordinary as anything, except that what it was meant to be was something utterly terrible. Miss Lappet was not the murderer. Neither was Miss Hopkins or the one. It was Miss Griffin. Chapter 4. Miss Griffin had done it. Why hadn't we thought of her as a suspect? Daisy hit me by the wrist. She was dragging me along somewhere and I let her. I didn't much care about anything except what was going on in my head. Miss Griffin had done it. Of course. As soon as we knew that Miss Lappet's supposed alibi was useless, we should have realised that Miss Griffin's had vanished as well, but we had never even considered her. I thought again about that conversation Daisy had overheard between Miss Griffin and Miss Tennyson. Why hadn't we realised how sinister Miss Griffin's request had been? There I was, minding my own business in an opportune listening place in the library corridor, Daisy had told me, and Miss Griffin came up to Miss Tennyson. "Miss Tennyson," she said, "I need to talk to you. You haven't quite finished helping with that little project of yours. You were so late to my office on Monday evening that we barely got a thing done." "Yes, but I made up for it Wednesday," Miss Tennyson had said nervously. "Ah, but not quite," replied Miss Griffin. "There's still just a bit of work that needs to be finished." Honestly, Hazel, Miss Tennyson went as white as a sheet. She was shaking. "Can we perhaps schedule another session?" asked Miss Griffin. "There's just a little more work I'd like you to do, perhaps this evening." If it had been any other mistress, we might have been more suspicious, but somehow Miss Griffin had always seemed so remote from the other masters and mistresses, so above everything that went on at Deep Dean, and Miss Lappet, Miss Hopkins, and the one had all been such good suspects, so it had Miss Tennyson and Miss Parker to start with. They had all had motives for killing Miss Bell, while Miss Griffin didn't appear to have any motive at all. But Miss Griffin had done it. Why? I felt Daisy shaking my arm. "Hazel," she said, "you're talking to yourself." I blinked and found that somehow we had ended up in Old Wing cloakroom. The bell for end of lunch was ringing. "Come on," said Daisy. "Hide!" She dragged me into one of the very far corners, which was full of coats that the girls from years ago lost and never bothered to find again. They smelt slightly rotten, and their grey fabric had gone a bit green with age. I squeezed myself in next to Daisy. We sat there in the dimness, trying not to breathe in the odd coat smell too much. Then Daisy reached out her hand and took hold of mine. I could feel it shaking. "I never guessed it would be Miss Griffin," she said quietly. "I didn't want to tell you, but I was nearly sure that Miss Hopkins and the one. It was them. It was all beginning to fit, motive, means, even the earring. But oh, Miss Griffin!" I nodded, making the coats in front of my face sway. She doesn't seem real, does she?" I asked. "She isn't human," said Daisy. "She's a headmistress, though. Through and through. I thought so anyway. Well, now we know how the murderer got Miss Tennyson to help. Miss Griffin must have offered the deputy job in exchange for her services, and that conversation I overheard on Friday makes sense now. Miss Griffin was reminding Miss Tennyson that they were in it together. She must have been asking her to help search the school again that evening for the lost earring. The torch, we say, when we were creeping about on Friday night. Well, I suppose it must have been them hunting. Heavens! I wonder why she did it, though. What on earth would be worth murdering 2 people for? If you were already the headmistress of Deep Dean, Miss Tennyson had to be bumped off because she was on the verge of telling the police. But why ever kill Miss Bell in the first place? She must have had a reason, I said, although my mind was as blank as Daisy's. Miss Griffin seemed to have everything, to want for nothing. She ruled Deep Dean, had all the other mistresses running after her, was perfectly well off, even quite good looking for an old person. I didn't know what, though, I admitted. "Let's be logical about this," said Daisy, squeezing my hand. Hers was beginning to feel more steady, although mine was still trembling. "We know she did it, just as you said. We know when and how. Now all we need is to know why. Why do you people kill other people?" "Money," I said promptly. Daisy had drummed these reasons into me enough times for me to know from my heart. Power, love, fear, revenge. But Miss Griffin had more money and power than Miss Bell anyway, so it couldn't have been those. "Likewise," said Daisy. "Revenge seems unlikely. Miss Griffin could have simply not given Miss Bell the deputy job or fired her if she wanted revenge for something. So that leaves love and fear. Well, what if, Hazel? Tell me if this doesn't make any sense. What if Miss Bell was blackmailing Miss Griffin, asking for money? Or no, the deputy job in exchange for keeping quiet about something. That would explain why Miss Griffin couldn't simply fire Miss Bell. But Miss Griffin seems so perfect, I objected. What could she be blackmailed about?" "Well, I don't know," said Daisy, "but if she killed 2 people over it, it must be rather awful. What do you think, though? Am I right?" Even then, in the middle of everything else going on in my head, I had time to be amazed. Daisy Wells asking me what I thought about her detective work. "It does make sense," I said. "If anything does. Pity we can't just ask Miss Bell about it, isn't it?" asked Daisy with a little chuckle. "Excuse me, but why were you murdered?" "Perhaps she left a note," I said. Daisy chuckled again, then she squeezed my fingers so hard that I yelped. "Hazel," she said, "this isn't actually a stupid thing to say at all. As all my books will point out, blackmailers do generally keep copies of incriminating documents in a safe place for insurance. What if Miss Bell did something like that? If she did," I said, squeezing back in excitement, "they might be down at school." "Yes," said Daisy. "I bet Miss Griffin and Miss Tennyson were looking for them as well as the earring last week." Then we both remembered that Deep Dean was rather a large place. We sank back into the coat, sighing. "No, wait," said Daisy, sitting upright again. "Let's deduce. Miss Bell and Miss Griffin must have prearranged their meeting in the gym. They wouldn't have met there by chance on Monday evening. So Miss Bell would have time to prepare for it and hide any evidence that she was using to blackmail Miss Griffin. She would have put it somewhere safe, somewhere Miss Griffin wouldn't have thought of when she was looking for it. So not the mistress's common room," I said, "and not the science labs either." "Too obvious," Daisy agreed. "Well, where do we know Miss Bell went on Monday night?" "The gym," I said. "But there's nowhere to hide something in the gym. Jones would find it if it was in the cupboard, and besides, it's too close to the meeting place." Then a flash of something that Daisy would have called Sherlocky brilliance if it happened to her. I saw the answer. "Daisy," I breathed, "the cloakroom, right here. Remember the first former who found Miss Bell digging around in the coats in here? We only used what she said to establish when Miss Bell left the gym, but what if Miss Bell was here to hide the evidence?" Daisy said something extremely unladylike, then she hugged me. I growled. "Coat pockets," she said. "Nobody ever uses these ratty old ones. They stay here until they rot away. It's the perfect hiding place. Quick, Hazel, dig." And she began pouring through the pile of old coats that surrounded us. Shivering with excitement, I hunted with her. We were on the trail again, I thought, as I shoved my hand into ripped and dirty pockets, pulling out snapped pencils and coat furry sweets. Then my fingertips bumped against something large and cardboard stiff that cracked when I squeezed it. Holding my breath, I pulled it out and parted the coats in front of me to see that I was clutching a red notebook that said, in small precise letters on its cover, "Verity's Diary." "Daisy," I said quietly, "I've got it." We will stop there. I love it when it ends on a cliffhanger. Have a lovely Monday, and I will see you again tomorrow.